I am a beginner at a lot of things, but specifically in the startup space. My goal is to one day have my own startup. I'm going to be documenting my journey into the startup space in a series of clips, and I will share everything that I learned with you guys. To guide me on this journey, I'm going to be using Nawvel, and the first resource that I found there was Combinator Startup School. That is where I'll be starting, and we'll see how much of this I can apply to my own life. So come along, follow me on this journey, and let's learn together. Do you want to succeed? Here are some key components to a successful startup, shared by former YC president Sam Altman. You need a product so good people tell their friends, so it should be simple to explain and easy to understand. Next, you should be in a small but growing market. You also need someone who can infect others with enthusiasm for your idea. You need to have an idea that would be huge if it works. The team you build is basically the company you build, so pick carefully. Make sure to include optimists and idea generators in your team. And the final two things you need for success are momentum and a competitive advantage. How to split equity among co-founders? That's a tough question to answer. YC CEO and partner Michael Seibel answers it for us. You have to remember that at the end of the day, the equity split is what will motivate your co-founder. It's better to be generous with equity rather than not. And an equal split or 50-50 is a good general rule of thumb. To hedge or protect yourself, you need 4-year vesting and 1-year drop-off. This means that they have to work for the company for 4 years before they can get their equity. And if they get fired within 1 year, they get nothing. Is your startup idea actually good? YC partner Kevin Hale breaks down how to figure that out. Basically, you break down an idea into 3 parts. Number 1, the problem. This is basically the setting that allows your startup to grow quickly. The problem should be popular. It should also be urgent. It's good if the problem is also expensive to fix. Number 2 is the solution to that problem. You want to be sure that you're finding a solution to a problem that already exists. So don't start with the solution. 3 is insight into why your idea will succeed. And this is determined by what unfair advantage you have. And it's really important to have at least one. Do you know what an MVP is? Or how to plan one? YC CEO and partner Michael Seibel does a great job of explaining it. MVP stands for minimum viable product, or the most basic thing that you can deliver to users to see if you can provide any value. For most companies, you're going to have a lean MVP. This means that your MVP will be fast to build, should take weeks, not months, will have limited functionality, so like the most basic features. And finally, is just a starting point from where you can improve. In practice, this would look like this. Launch your MVP quick. Get your initial customers. Talk to them and get feedback on your MVP. And from there, improve your product. Talking to users is really important. YC partner Eric Michikovsky tells you how to talk to users. A good founder directly talks to his users. There's no middleman. Here are a few tips for conducting user interviews. Talk about their life, not your product. And listen, don't talk because you want to get the most amount of information. We'll break up the startup into 3 phases. First one is the idea stage. Here you'll find the first users with the problem that you're trying to fix. You'll also share it with friends and coworkers, and ideally you'll be a user of your own product as well. Next is the prototype stage. Here you will find good first customers who are willing to pay for your product. And finally, the launch stage. At this point, you want to know if you have a good product market fit. To know this, ask your users this on a weekly basis. How disappointed would they be if they could not use your product anymore? Couple tips. Always ask for phone numbers and discard bad data. How to launch. YC partner Kat Manyalik has some really good tips. First of all, you need to understand that you can launch again and again. You would do this to identify the right users and also see how users respond. There can be a few different types of launches. The friends and family launch. Here, the name basically speaks for itself. The stranger launch. This one is like the last one except you're launching to strangers. Online community launch. Here you launch to communities on online platforms like Reddit and Facebook. Or you build your own community and then you launch your product to them. Here's a tip. When launching, try and not use any marketing language. Just talk like you would normally do. Are you always out of time? Here are some tips on how to prioritize your time by Adora Chung, who's a partner at YC. We only have that much time in a day and we have to spend it on First, we need to understand the difference between real and fake progress. For that, we need to set a KPI, or a key performance indicator, for your startup. So for most startups, that's either revenue or active users. The main difference is that real progress moves your KPI forward, while fake progress does nothing. Talking to users or building product are good examples of real progress, while being active on Twitter or attending conferences is usually fake progress. To prioritize your tasks correctly, look for two things. Does it have a high, medium, or low impact on your KPI? And how long does your task take? Is it quick, medium, or slow? Usually the best tasks to focus on are high impact and take little time to do. How do you pitch a startup to investors? Here are a couple pointers by YC partner Kevin Hale. There are two core things that you need to keep in mind. Number one, be clear. Make sure that you can explain your idea to someone who knows nothing about your business, and avoid complexity. Basically, what this means that even your mom should understand your idea when you explain it to her. And number two, be concise. To know if you're being concise, you need to have the answer to these three questions. What are you making? Who is the customer? And what is the problem? That's basically all you need to have a good pitch. Do you think you're a good leader? If your answer is no, keep watching. Ali Roughani, who's a partner at YC, teaches us how to lead. Leaders come in all shapes and sizes, so you have the potential to be one as well. Be yourself. Don't try and copy other leaders, because people are really good at sensing inauthenticity. It has been shown that all great leaders have three things in common. Number one, they speak clearly, because great communication is simple. To practice that, you need to first practice how to think clearly. Number two, they have a really good judgment about people, which is really important when making hiring or firing decisions. And number three, they have strong personal integrity and commitment. So you'll usually see them giving it their all. Here's a tip. Trust is the success metric for leadership. So view every challenge as an opportunity for people to increase their trust in you as a leader. Here's all you need to know about pivoting. Explained by YC partner and head of admissions, Dalton Caldwell. What is pivoting? Pivoting essentially means changing your idea. Why pivot, you might ask? If what you're doing isn't working, that's a good reason. Another reason is that you hate what you're doing. How to pivot? Find something that makes you excited to work on it. And also, look for something easy to get started and get market feedback ASAP. When to pivot? If you've been trying to get users for weeks or months but you're not getting any. If your idea is impossible to start because it needs years of building or a lot of capital. And if in your heart you know that it won't work, here's a tip. Don't pivot over and over again, because that causes whiplash and causes founders to give up. Lots of founders struggle when it comes to pricing. YC partner Kevin Hale has a few pointers to follow. Follow the 10-5-20 rule. 10, as in the perceived value of your product, should be 10 times at what the price of it is. 5, as in keep raising your prices by 5%. And 20, as in keep doing the previous step until you have a 20% user drop-off. There are three main elements that you need to keep in mind. Cost, or basically what are your costs as a startup. Price, or the price that you're selling your product or service for. And finally, the value, or the perceived value that the customer has of what you're selling. If you can figure out the value and the cost, you can figure out the price. Growth for startups is crucial. YC partner Gustav Alstromer has a couple of tips for that. In the early days of the startup, you have to do things that don't scale, like the founders personally meeting with the customers. Don't think about growth until you've achieved PMF, or product market fit. The best way to measure that is retention. Basically, how many users come back to use your product. So once you have PMF, for growth, you need growth channels. If people Google the problem that you're solving, you can use Google SEO, or search engine optimization. If you have users paying for your product, you can use paid acquisition channels like Facebook or Google Ads. But be sure to be cautious of customer acquisition cost. This means how much it costs for you to get one customer. And that number should be less than what the user is paying for your product. After weeks of going through startup school, I'm now ready to begin my own startup. Well, no. There are still many things that I need to learn. But I did learn a lot and gained a good basic understanding of different aspects of startups. Here are some key takeaways that I found to be really useful. Taking care of your physical and mental health should always be your #1 priority. Time is very scarce, so it's important that you learn how to prioritize it. It's good to think and plan many years ahead. Have a plan for conflict resolution that is ideally constructed before the conflict. Don't marry your idea if it's not working. Follow Nawvel for more series and content like this.